It's football and other F words. Free agency fiesta for the Tennessee Titans. Since everybody started stealing Frenzy after we used it, it's a trendsetter. So now we are going to see if we can get free agency fiesta going here on football and other F words, part of the 440 Sports Network. Mike Herndon, you can read his article that's out right now, paulkarski.com, talking about all the people that the Titans signed that you hate. And then over at paulkarski.com tomorrow, I'll have an article telling you what all those signings of the players that you hate actually mean for the Tennessee Titans in 2024. Over at secondinbox.com, we got all kinds of articles and stuff out, especially about a player that I hate. I couldn't believe that I actually I started writing down, and I was going to talk about every free agent that the Titans have signed. And I started writing with Kenneth Murray first. I was like, I'll just get Kenneth Murray out of the way. And then by the end of it, I'm like, it's 1,400 words. I'm like, it's an article on its own, all about Kenneth Murray, who I have never seen a player that has been white knighted as quickly as Kenneth Murray by the Titans fan base. And we'll talk about that later. Before we get to that,
and by the way, I did the same. I did the same thing, except with Tony Pollard on my column. I wrote probably it was like over 1,500 words just on Tony Pollard, and I was like, oh, I've got to get to the rest of these guys, I guess now. Yeah. So we definitely ended up over. No, it must have been more than that because we ended up over 5,500 words, I think, on that.
Oh wow,
it's a monster.
My article tomorrow is half that. So there you
go.
Yeah. But you can't have a fiesta without some liquor, and you know where you should go get some liquor. That sponsors Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Go get you some stuff to make some margaritas, get you some fine tequila, get you some mix. Hey, listen, if tequila is not your thing, get you some stuff to make a Moscow Mule if you want. Everything you need, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Join their mailing list, and you'll be alerted to when our tickets go on sale for our annual draft party that is hosted by both Bluegrass Beverages and Seekers Beverages. I want to get right into it, just in case news breaks. You never know that something may happen that may be actual news. But you know, at the outset of free agency, I wanted to preach patience. Wanted to make sure that everybody knew that football's a business, things happen, this and that. And then the Titans go and tender Jack Gibby, and I want Rand Carthon fired. It is infuriating. It is infuriating that they are wasting at least it's league minimum. So I don't really know what Jack Gibby's league minimum is, but whatever it is, it's too much. It's too much money for Jack Gibby. I'm so afraid of holdovers that are going to linger around, and then because of their existence, they are a void of health. They suck in. They're an abyss, a black hole. They take away the life force of other players and find themselves getting meaningful snaps because of other people getting injured. So I'm just really torn. I just really don't like Jack Gibby. And I just wanted to Jack Gibby, the player. I just want to throw that out there. I do not
personal issues with him. Look, this is the same thing as NWI last year. It's a minimum. It's a minimum
they
contract.
Always find a way. They always find a way.
That was with Mike Vrabel. We don't know if Jack Gibby's going to have a automatic.
Hey, listen, he's got his foot in the door, Mike. That's the problem. Don't give those types of players an inch because they'll take a mile.
Maybe the Titans need to go about finding other players that'll take miles and can actually run.
Maybe that'd be great. I get it. It's not a big deal or anything. I just wanted to open up the show with a little bit of fun and all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about the stuff that really matters. The player signs, or the team signs Sadiq Charles, which is their big free agent signing, based on the reaction to the signing last night. Everybody went crazy that they cannot believe that a GM would sign a depth piece before free agency begins in the tampering period, forgetting that John Robinson had 2 off seasons where these were the first 4 free agents that he signed: Matt Castle, Darren Bates, Brennan Trawick, and Nate Palmer. And then Jeff Swaim, Jamarco Jones, AJ Moore, and Trenton Cannon. Where was the outrage those years besides for me? Where was the outrage on Twitter those years?
Well, it was there. It was there.
Yeah, I don't think it was there as much as what it was for Sadiq Charles. It's like everybody forgot the first, the first day of the splashes that they made with Tony Pollard, Chidobe Awuzie, and Lloyd Cushenberry. It's just Titans Twitter.
Listen, you get 1 hour. You get 1 hour of grace period, and if there's not another piece of news within 1 hour, it all hell's breaking loose. That's the way free agency works. Rand Carthon should know better. I do think, from a PR standpoint, they should have had one of those signings. And I know maybe it's impossible for them to get an agent to actually keep his mouth shut and not text Ian Rappaport as soon as he, has a inkling that he's got a deal done. But wouldn't it have been a better PR move for them to have something teed up for as soon as the Derrick Henry news broke? Because they knew it was coming. That, boom, here's a good piece of news. It probably needed to be.
We've all known it's coming since last offseason.
we have. But to let it be official that it was the Ravens. And look, I've been telling people on this show that it's going to be the Ravens for probably going back to the trade deadline, I think was when I first started talking about the Ravens with him. But look, now that it's officially the Ravens, people have feelings about that. I think you should have held on to Lloyd Cushenberry. You should have held on to him for day 2, and then just 15 minutes after the Derrick Henry news comes out, boom, Lloyd Cushenberry. All the people are distracted. You don't have people melting down and crying on Twitter for, just stream of consciousness tweets coming out about how Rand Carthon is awful. And,
they played a Sarah McLachlan song on 102.5 with underneath highlights of Derrick Henry. And I thought it was hilarious. And I'm sure it's tongue in cheek and not to be taken seriously, because I thought it was hilarious though. And I wish they did. I mean, I am with you. I so wish they did. And we got a lot to talk about, because I mean, there is a lot of good talking points around this. So over at stackingtheinbox.com for paid subscribers, I put out my 10 commandments for free agency this year. But we're going to talk about how many of you are sinners and have been breaking these commandments today. So let's start with Derrick Henry. We have been labeled by a few people Derrick Henry haters. We've basically have ushered him out the door. We escorted him, forced him out of St. Thomas Sports Park. Us two, not himself, not Rand Carthon, not anybody else, just us two. But I think I speak for both of us that we both really have enjoyed Derrick Henry's time, but it was also clearly Derrick Henry's time to go, because this offense is changing. I've been asked several times, or is it gross or whatever to see Derrick Henry be a Raven? I don't know. I mean, it was really, as a younger fan, it was really crazy to see, and I hated that Steve McNair and Derek Mason and Samari Rolle went to the Ravens. I hated it. Hated it. Now I'm like, I guess because that really didn't change anything for either team. Now I'm just like, it is what it is. For me personally, and I'm not telling anybody how they should act or anything, but for me personally, I'm hoping that he has 100 yards on the season and they go 0-17, which is really no different than it could have been Gus Edwards. And I would hope that he had a 100-yard season and goes in 0-17, because I don't like the Ravens. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter who plays for the Ravens. I just hate them.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I have so many thoughts on this whole Derrick Henry thing. One being that, yes, he is in decline. Yes, I know the offensive line sucked. Look, they sucked as pass protectors. They were actually middle of the pack by virtually any metric you want to use as run blockers. It was not nearly as dire a situation as run blocking unit as it was a pass blocking unit. So it's not just, oh, they're bad or, oh, they're good. They can be good at run blocking and bad at pass blocking. That is a thing that can happen. But it's clear that he's in decline. He had the least missed tackles forced last season of any year of his career. He had the lowest, I think it was one of the lowest yards after contact per attempt of his career. All of the metrics, if you look at what's the one for Next Gen Stats has it, it's rushing yards over expectation per attempt, which is literally like a modeled version that takes into account where the defenders are, how fast they're moving, where the offensive blockers are, how fast they're moving, and where the ball is when the ball is handed to the running back, and how many yards a back would be expected to get on that carry versus the average running back. So it's all a ton of data that gets modeled in, and then they can basically tell you based on the location of the players on the field, this is how much yardage this model expects you to gain on this play. His numbers on that were like right at like middle of the pack. Like he basically was a replacement level back from the standpoint of, was he getting what was blocked? Yes, he was getting what was blocked. He wasn't getting you anymore. He used to be like a +1 like yard per attempt. Like he would get you an extra yard per attempt over expected per carry, which was a phenomenal rate. Like he was number 1 or number 2 for like his peak seasons back in 2019, 2020. He's no longer that, and that's okay. He's still a very good running back, and that's the thing that we're like, if I say he's in decline, which means that he's not as good as he used to be, which is true and is normal for a 30-year-old running back, people hear that and they go, "You think he's washed? I can't believe you think he's washed. What? You think he's washed?" And I put out a tweet that said, I think he's probably still a top 10 back in the league, and people are flipping out over it. Like, you think he's probably a top? Yes. Do you know what the fucking word probably means? It means probably. It means, yes, he probably is still a top 10 back, which is really good. It's really good. But people have this like blockage to where they can't hear anything negative about their heroes. And people did the same fucking thing with Kevin Byard last
or their
year.
new
When
ones
this
like Kenneth Murray.
well, yes, we'll get to him. But
We'll
we
get
did this
to Kenneth
last
Murray.
year on this show. We talked about Kevin Byard was in decline, and nobody wanted to hear it at the time. It was, oh, it's the defense. They put him in a bad spot. How can he play when he has Christian Fulton on the field with him, and he has to hold his hand and change his diaper after every play? And people were going, no, it's Kevin Byard. He's going to ball out in Philly. Watch, he's going to ball out. He sucked ass in Philly. He was worse in Philly than he was here. So I'm not like celebrating that necessarily, but this is what happens.
He was so bad that the Bears, he only had 2 teams that wanted him in free agency. He was been a free agent for this whole time. Could go see all these teams, Kevin Byard. And I don't really want to talk much about Kevin Byard. But he went to the only team that showed interest in him, and it was one of 2, and he didn't even, I think the other one must have canceled on him. So, like, for me, it's like, I think it was just Chicago. It was the only team. And they went from Eddie Jackson to Kevin Byard, which is the 2 Spider-Man pointing at each other because they're the same thing. It's ridiculous what people still do. And let me say this about Derrick Henry, because you're getting very excited and everything. I want to give you a little bit of a breather. Is that I love the fact that there's all this objectivity when it comes to being able to talk about Derrick Henry from us, but everybody else is like, the Titans should have traded him. Like, that to me, throughout this whole thing about Derrick Henry, the thing that I hate the most is that the Tennessee Titans did not trade him. I think that is the most ridiculous thing that they could have done. Whoever it was involved, because we get these conflicting reports about, well, maybe it was Rand, maybe it was Vrabel. I've heard both. I lean it's probably Vrabel, because of being Rand Carthon gets hired and they're at the combine and they're automatically talking about trading Derrick Henry. Has to, and it comes from Ian Rappaport, who we know is shilling for Rand Carthon. So to me, he should have been traded back at the combine or back around last season. He should have been traded at the trade deadline. But I want to ask you something. I'm not as sold as everybody else that the Ravens and Derrick Henry are some match made impervious. They're going to the Super Bowl automatically fit, because I think the scheme it's not Greg Roman. If this was Greg Roman, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Super Bowl, book it. Like that's, but we just
I
saw
don't
them.
know.
Well, I'm just saying, we just saw them with Lamar Jackson and a very good rushing attack, not even attempt to run the ball when it mattered the most in the playoffs. So what I don't understand that this is, first off, no team is a running back away. I put it up on the screen earlier, but FanDuel tweeted out that Super Bowl odds for the Ravens before Derrick Henry was plus 900, after Derrick Henry was plus 900. Yeah. No team is a running back away. The Ravens specifically are, because they still have a lot of other questions. They have a new defensive coordinator who's probably not as good as the other one. They're losing a few defensive players. They've traded away their starting right tackle for hardly anything, which is very odd.
They're losing 3 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from a team that, again, like you said, was the number 1 rushing attack in the league. Now, I still do think that like Lamar Jackson is the primary reason that they're not the number 1 rushing attack in the league. But also, right, what are they going to be, the even more number 1 rushing attack in the league? And is that going to move the needle a ton for them? Because, like, we know, and this is something that, look, the discourse on Derrick Henry has totally driven me insane recently because, like, look, I get, like, he's a hero. He's awesome. I loved watching him play. He's one of my favorite players to ever watch, to study, anything like that. He's incredible. He's awesome. I love him. However, I and almost everyone else in the Titans fan base have been just calling for years for this team to throw the football. Throw the football. Stop this 80s archaic 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. Guess what? Derrick Henry is the 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. That is who he is. He needs an offense that is built around that. He is not going to fit in a wide open passing scheme that's asking the back to line up wide and run real routes and do different things there, because he's not a good player in the passing game. So you are getting your modern offense, and that's okay. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. It comes at the expense of your, one of your favorite players and one of the best players of all time. But guess what? He's 30 years old. He's not going to be great when he's 30, 36, right? He's not going to probably be great when he's 32, frankly. The cliff generally comes for these guys at some point, and Derrick Henry has not hit it yet, and that's a testament to his training and the freak of nature that he is and all those things like that. But at some point, it is going to come for him, and it gets more and more likely every year that passes. So it could be this year, it could be next year, but at some point, Derrick Henry's going to fall off the cliff, and he's just going to be a big guy that can't move. And it's probably going to happen while he's in a Ravens uniform, which is a good thing for the Titans. But yeah, they lose these 3 offensive linemen. I think there's some questions there with the Ravens, but I do think that in theory,
like, who's catching the ball? Are they just going to keep? It feels like they just keep they're repeating the same thing, right? Mark Andrews and one good wide receiver, and we're just going to keep doing running backs, because what's going to happen when Keaton Mitchell comes in? Like, is it because we know that Derrick Henry's most effective when he has a lot of carries? Well, if Lamar Jackson's keeping the ball and not giving it to Derrick Henry, don't forget they run a lot out of shotgun. I think they ran out of shotgun the most in the NFL, maybe second most to Cincinnati. I don't know. Like, I'm not seeing it. Like, I'm seeing that this is a good way for Henry to extend his shelf life.
Yeah.
But you're losing 3 starting offensive linemen. You don't really have, teams can still stack the box against the Ravens. I think this idea that they won't stack the box with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry back there and just Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews to worry about in coverage for right now, that I don't get it. I don't know. I just don't see this impenetrable or unstoppable offense that everybody else is so quick. But I loved your tweet, and I totally agreed. This is the first thing that popped in my head, is that everybody destroyed the Tennessee Titans for extending. Someone said, did y'all see the report they've inquired about Debo? No, I haven't seen anybody at least noteworthy, and I have notifications on for people that are noteworthy say that, and that's saying that maybe I'm missing somebody. But let me say this, Mike. Everybody destroyed the Tennessee Titans back in when he signed his extension back in July, and they paid him all this money. And now everybody's praising, and he's older now and coming off one of his worst seasons, and now everybody's praising the Ravens. And I think that just lets you know national media just sucks. And we say it every year. This is a good time to say it because someone said, well, no one's going to talk about the Tennessee Titans in a good light because DeAndre Hopkins is their only named player, forgetting Jeffrey Simmons and Will Levis. But either way, you should not give a shit about the national media.
That's
Just
right.
saying.
That's true.
This is the only show you fucking need. You don't need the national media.
It is. Just come on in here, get what you need, you little effers. Don't need to be bothering with these nerds out there that are going to tell you that signing a 30-year-old Derrick Henry puts the Ravens over the top as a Super Bowl team when, 4 years ago the Titans were dumbasses because who pays a running back? When Derrick Henry, at that time, was he coming off the 2,000-yard season? Was that when he became a free agent, or was it the year before that?
The year before. I think that was the year leading into it.
But that was the year that he went off and the offense was going nuts. That's right. It was after 2019. Which honestly, I kind of still think 2019 is still his peak. That is his absolute peak. And when he was in the playoffs, just running roughshod over everybody, the Titans signed him at his very peak to a 4-year deal that was pretty reasonable at the time. Wasn't even the highest paid running back when they agreed to that deal. But now that the Eagles are signing Saquon Barkley and the Ravens are signing Derrick Henry, now it's cool. Now it's cool to sign running back. So like I see all you nerds out there switching up. 4 years later.
I guess it sounded like Mason Rudolph is your backup quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. A 1-year deal worth up to $3.62 million. After 6 seasons with the Steelers, that ended on a high note with solid play down the stretch. Rudolph gets a fresh start in Tennessee. That's from Mike Garofalo on X. Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah. He's
a guy that I'll have to write about when we hang off here. But I mean, like that signals the end. Goodbye, Malik Willis.
How many words?
Good luck in your future endeavors. I'll probably get to 300 or 400 words. I mean, but I'm just a lengthy talker. That just, sometimes it's when I used to write for essays and stuff, I would try to cram in as many words if there was a word limit that really you didn't have to. Like you could cut it down to like 5 or from 10 words to 5 words to make the same point. But so that kind of carries over in my writing sometimes. And I've talked a lot about the sun exploding in this article. I'm pushing the limit of what PK will tolerate in an article.
Trying to find where those boundaries are.
Yeah.
I will say Mason Rudolph did deal down the stretch. Like he was legitimately good. He was better than Kenny Pickett ever was last year for Pittsburgh.
I mean, look, it's great. It's great to have a competent backup quarterback that can come in and lead a team down the field and take deep shots. Mason Rudolph has proven that he could take the deep shots. He did that a lot with Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson. I like the fit.
He's 8-4-1 as a starter in his career, so it's not like he's a total scrub. His overall numbers
and compared
decent.
to what the average backup quarterback, by the way, because Chase Daniel put this out because he's like the most paid backup quarterback ever in the history of America. The backup quarterbacks or fringe guys were getting paid $9 million per year, or not. We're averaging a $9 million contract. This is up to $3.62 million. So this is a steal in the backup quarterback market, which is crazy to say, but that is a steal in the backup quarterback market and a competent quarterback. And listen, he's just a couple years older version of Drake May. That's what everybody says. This is the Drake May of backup quarterbacks that the Titans have landed. That's your Mason Rudolph on the fly. Your Mason Rudolph analysis for the Tennessee Titans.
Hey, do you think him and Andre Dillard are going to have a good time comparing their Myles Garrett notes?
They should. It'll be interesting. I like the Mason Rudolph signing. But I love that today yesterday it was all quiet and everybody got Sadiq Charles. Today, the moves have been Julius Chestnut, Jack Gibbens, and Mason Rudolph. Well, what a roller coaster of a ride from the start of free agency to now. But this is really good. I really like this signing. He did do a good job mentoring Kenny Pickett, but who could? Let's be honest. Kenny Pickett sucks.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do. Okay, let's I wanted to get to some more of the Tennessee Titans players and our analysis on them. But I do want to talk about the Texans because that is the hot topic surrounding the NFL. And there's a couple other free agent targets that the Tennessee Titans lost out on. But they signed Azeez Al-Shaair, they signed Denico Autry, to contracts that are both exceedingly above the market value for both, in my opinion, for both of them. And that's just compared to the market value of those players. Apparently, they're going to play Denico Autry at defensive tackle, which is, I don't think you're going to get what you want out of Denico Autry at his tackle. You're taking away his best asset, which is his versatility. But we'll see if that's actually true or not. Then they go and sign Danielle Hunter. Holy crap! To a expensive 98% of the money fully guaranteed, about as close as you can get to a Kirk Cousins contract, which is insane to me.
I really want to know. I think the $1 million that was not guaranteed had to be just like a marketing thing so that the maybe the Texans didn't get in trouble with the rest of the owners for giving out a fully guaranteed contract. Like, what is that? Like, what is the $1 million that they're holding out on? Like, you can have this $49 million, but that other one, you're gonna have to earn that one, buddy. Weird. Very weird.
That is a wild contract, though, and I'm glad that, listen, I'm all for players getting paid, but that is a wild contract. But you take those the contracts of Denico Autry, Azeez Al-Shaair, Danielle Hunter, but also throw in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. To me, you could talk about the Texans doing this or doing that, but these are all 2 or 3 years deals that are made for right now. They want to win right now, and they're in a stage where they can go and win. They feel they're close enough. Even though they really haven't done enough, in my opinion, on offense, because Joe Mixon doesn't really move the needle for me.
Yeah. And
they don't. I mean, what wide receivers they got? Maybe that's what they're going to do with their draft pick or whatever.
I think Nico and Tank Dell are a nice duo. I mean, they were really good last year when they were healthy.
But I mean, you can't really rely on Tank Dell right now. I mean, you can, but you can't. But then he can only play in the slot, it really seems like. And then you got Noah Brown. I don't know. It's just, we'll see. But they're trying to win right now, run it back, and then add on to it. They're doing what the Jaguars should have done last year. What the Jaguars should have done last year, this is what the Texans should have done.
Yeah, so they're in the right spot to be able to do that. Right. They've got CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud proved himself. It's time for them to double down. But none of those
contracts I want the Tennessee Titans paying, includes Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. In my opinion, I don't think you pay any of those contracts for any of those players in the current Tennessee Titans situation.
I said on Buck's show today, I said we need a 30 for 30 on the CJ Gardner-Johnson, the last 2 contracts he signed. How do you go from a career best year where you like lead the NFL in interceptions and you get a 1-year prove it deal, and then the next year you get hurt, don't really do anything at all, and you get 3 years at $11 million a year? That is a bizarre series of contracts that makes zero sense on any level. I think I did want them to add CJ Gardner-Johnson, but not at that number. Yeah. Like, I thought CJ was going to be a $6 to $8 million a year kind of guy because of the injury history and things like that. So just, I'm perfectly happy with them sitting out on that deal. Now, look, Danielle Hunter.
Real quick, Logan, can you tag me in whatever tweet you're talking about? Can you tag me in that? Because I got to tag me on Twitter because I got my phone up. I have to see what you're talking about because Logan just puts in the chat. According to Josh Norman, the Titans are signing Ridley for $90+ million.
That's what someone else posted. And then no. He's talking about Josh Norris. But Norris didn't report that. He just retweeted it. He quote tweeted some random who had said that. I
believe the Titans have the most hearing. This is from Pretty Ricky. Whoever. God dang it, Logan.
This is some
Calvin Ridley is now leaning towards. Okay, here Calvin Ridley is now leaning towards signing with the division rival Dark Horse over the Jags based on the huge offer of $90 million+, which could be the Colts. Who knows? But I mean, that's from whoever. I mean, Pretty Ricky is a respected notary the People's NFL Insider, Dad, G-Men, Yanks. I believe in Wes Steinberg. Beat writers hate me. That's all you need to know. Wes Steinberg. This is nothing.
Yeah, nonsense.
All that for nothing, Logan. We don't have time for that kind of shit. We got real stuff to talk about.
We've got to talk about Kenneth fucking Murray. No, what were we talking about? I can't remember now.
It was Inked Up Shane, by the way, was this, and he was right. But
Clowny.
But we were talking about the Texans, but it's also about remember when the Jaguars have been like spending and spending and spending? Just because you sign all these guys doesn't mean they live up to the contract or anything like that, right? I mean, yes, Danico Autry is a good player. Azeez Al-Shaair is a good player. And Danielle Hunter is a great player. So, and with going to the Texans, for sure, is going to make them a great defense. But no, they're not going 17-0, and they're spending a lot of money to try and win a Super Bowl now, which when you're in the right spot, you definitely should. The Tennessee Titans are not in that spot. People are going to get mad that I say this, but they're not 2 players away, unless those 2 players are Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Then maybe there you go. You get them too.
Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson, please.
Yeah.
No, I think the Texans, they're doing the right thing, but the reason that they're able to do all this is the fact that they have a roster that not only has C.J. Stroud, who proved himself last year as the guy, but also has guys like Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, all
They've
these
been building this roster for 3 to 4 years.
Yes.
Chef Wren, I believe, makes this point right here.
Exactly.
So,
the Deshaun Watson thing gave them a huge leg up on building this thing. And so they have all these young pieces on rookie deals that are not only like good players, but they're like excellent players at key positions. So like your cornerback 1, Derek Stingley, is on a cheap rookie deal. You know, you've got your 2 wide receivers are on very cheap deals, and they're playing well. So like, there's so many guys that they're saving money on. I mean, really, the only guy they were spending money on previously was Laramie Tunsil, like in any significant manner, anyways. But they've built this thing really smartly, and this is their opportunity to push all the chips in for the next couple of years, and they're going to be a really good team. Like I think Danielle Hunter, I don't know if everyone realizes how good he is. He's like one of 5 guys who have been in the top, who have had like, I think the number was like 70 or more pressures in the last 2 years. In each of the last 2 years, there's like 5 guys who have done that, and Danielle Hunter is one of them. The others are Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Micah Parsons. So like that is the echelon guy that he is.
But they're also, him and Azeez are both injury still.
There's injury.
They're still injury prone guys.
Hunter is older, like he's 29, I think. And so like there's some stuff like
Johnson.
There's ways that this doesn't. Oh, Gardner Johnson's Eagles though, right?
Yeah. I keep throwing him in there because he's the guy that everybody wanted.
Yeah, everybody wanted the Titans. And look, like this is the thing with free agency. They're not going to get everybody. Like they've been linked to a lot of these guys, and a lot of the guys that they've been linked to, I'm like, okay, yeah, hell yeah, that's a smart guy to be in on, and you're not going to get 100% of them. And the other thing is like, yes, you can sometimes just bid the highest dollar or go crazy with their numbers, but there's other times where like a guy just doesn't want to be there, like, right? And I think a lot of people are looking at that. Just to go back to the Henry Pollard thing real quick, we don't have to linger there really anymore, but a lot of people are sitting there going like, well, you could have had Derrick Henry for the same amount of money, basically, $8 million, $9 million a year, whatever, $10 million a year. It's not a big difference in cash. It's not. But there's no saying that Derrick Henry actually wanted to come back here. In fact, I'm pretty certain he didn't. If you listen to his like Bussin' with the Boys interview after the season, like and him, Lawan talking about, the locker room just wasn't the same. There wasn't, the same accountability with guys. And then, obviously he was disappointed that Vrabel got let go. There's no reason. There's nothing keeping him here at this point besides like allegiance to a logo and the fans or whatever, but he's in a better football position in Baltimore than he would have been here, like without a doubt. So there may not have even been a choice to be made as far as Pollard or Henry. It may have just been Henry said, "No, sorry guys, I'm moving on," and they pivoted to Pollard, which I think is a great landing spot, by the way, too.
Yeah, I just, everybody's like, well, the Texans, and I get it. Like, it's really hard. I even wrote about today, don't, don't get one of the commandments is like, don't get jealous for, against, opposing teams in free agency and everything. Because very rarely does winning free agency mean winning in the regular season. And it is hard not to get a little jealous of what the Texans have been able to do, but they've been able to do it because they've been terrible for so long, for so little. I have to remind myself for so terrible for so long. I have to remind myself that essentially the Titans don't have to go that same route to find the same success. There are different paths to success. They all don't have to look the same. But I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't a little bit jealous of that defense over there, because the Tennessee Titans, while they signed one of the top-ranked free agent cornerbacks, they signed one of the lowest-ranked free agents available at any position. I think they were ranked he was ranked in like between 220 and 250 in the free agency list for the PFF. But this guy, once he signed, though, Mike, so many people had a white knight for Kenneth Murray. I've never seen anybody that it's like, I don't expect people to watch a lot of Chargers game or anything. I'm not saying that, but a quick cursory, just, glance at either PFF or Pro Football Reference or anything is going to tell you that this guy's not good. And I am confused a little bit, perplexed. I think there is a vision for Kenneth Murray, and I kind of talk about it in PK's thing. But at the end of the day, this is like a lot. What the Tennessee Titans are telling you is that we have a lot of faith in Frank Bush, who has never turned around a linebacker, and a lot of faith in Denard Wilson, who has never coached linebackers, to make this linebacker good. Starting, and all I want out of him is starting level. And he's not even that currently. And that's just an objective fact. That's an objective fact that this is not a quality starting linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, I followed Kenneth Murray's career to some degree, just, from a distance, because I thought he was an interesting player coming out of Oklahoma back in, 2020 was his draft class, I believe.
Yes.
And physically, obviously talented. Like 6'3" or whatever he is, 6'3" or 6'4". He's a pretty big guy. 241 pounds, super powerful, super fast. Looks like he shot out of a cannon. On most plays, like it is obvious who Kenneth Murray is, even if you didn't know what number he was. If I just told you to look for the really fast big dude on the field for the Chargers, you'd pick him out pretty quickly after watching a couple plays. It's that obvious. He moves at a different speed. That being said, he does not have any clue how to play linebacker. Like it's so obvious watching him, and it's so obvious if you talk to people who have broken down Chargers film. What's his name? Wynn. Why am I blanking on his first name?
Ted Wynn.
Ted Wynn. He's broken down Chargers film. Go look at some of his stuff on Kenneth Murray. He's terrible in coverage. He's just not an instinctive linebacker. And look, I think there's an argument to be made, and I heard somebody discussing this the other day, and I wish I could remember where I heard it now, but I've imbibed so much free agency content over the last few days. It's all washing together. But at Oklahoma, Kenneth Murray was basically given free reign. Like he was a often like green dog blitzer or just a QB spy on passing downs, which basically means his job is just to sit there and follow where the quarterback goes. And when the quarterback gets close, attack him and knock him down. Like he was not asked to drop into coverage much. He was not asked to do a ton of like really complex stuff. Like he was a see ball, get ball linebacker. And that played to his strengths because he's really good at that. And then, of course, he goes to LA. And I think there's a couple things that if you want to be super charitable in your analysis of Kenneth Murray, which I will be for a moment because I'm a fair person, you can say, all right, he was drafted. And apparently this was on the record that Tom Telesco said that this was a pick that Anthony Lynn stood on the table for, that Anthony Lynn said, this is the guy that I need for my defense. And then Anthony Lynn gets fired after his rookie year. And by the way, Kenneth Murray, arguably his best season was his rookie year. And in comes Brandon Staley. And by the way, they were running a Gus Bradley defense when Anthony Lynn was there.
Oh my God, the Titans are signing Jaguar star wide receiver Calvin Ridley, completing their free agency with a splash and a stunner.
Whoa!
29-year-old Ridley gets a 4-year, $92 million deal with $50 million fully guaranteed on a contract negotiated by David Mogaleta and Reza Hassam. Holy crap. Josh Norman was right. Josh Norman, a.k.a. Josh Norris, was right. Pretty Ricky was right. He is the inked-up Shane.
Apologies
to Pretty Ricky.
Pretty Ricky. My gosh.
Oh my gosh, sir, that's a lot. That I'm gonna let you. We're talking about Kenneth Murray. Do we?
Yeah.
Really
Let me finish my Kenneth Murray stuff.
Because let's finish Kenneth Murray. Let me pull stuff I need to pull up while you're doing that.
We'll get to Ridley. Kenneth Murray. So he goes then into the Brandon Staley defense. Brandon Staley wants to defend. Basically, his whole thesis is that he wants to run everything too high shell, defend the run without, with basically a man down in the box. Which to do that, you need some ass kicker defensive tackles, which is why it worked great when he was in LA and he had Aaron Donald. You can get away with that shit. He did not have Aaron Donald or anyone even like passable in that role for the Chargers, which hurts a guy like Kenneth Murray, who then is having to deal with a lot more offensive linemen getting into his lap on the second level. So I think Murray, if you want to really look at this most charitably, he was not put in a good situation to succeed in that scheme. He does not fit Brandon Staley's preferred method of defense, who's going to run a lot of complicated coverages, things like that. And maybe if you stick him in a defense and you partner him with the right linebacker, which we'll talk about who I think that is in a minute, y'all probably already know, you could maybe see a situation where, all right, he's going to be your two-down thumper. He's going to be the guy that's able to chase down the ball. You're going to get him off the field on third downs, or you're going to use him as like a blitzer or like a sub package rusher, something like that. And you're going to find a way to make it work and take advantage of his athleticism and skill set without putting him in the positions where he's going to have to take bad angles and he's going to have to, get confused in coverage like he does and things like that. That's the best argument I can put together for it. But it's still a bad argument.
What I wrote about. So here's what I said about Kenneth Murray, because I know that's what everybody wants to hear. Bluegrass Beverages, our sponsor, I'm sure is loving that we're not talking about Calvin Ridley, but instead we're talking about Kenneth Murray. But I said here's the exact paragraph that I said. I do want to offer a solution though. Find your green dot guy. Hopefully, Jerome Baker, which is the guy I think we're both tuned in on, and 100%. Do what you saw Mike McDonald do with Patrick Queen. Let him be a mercenary linebacker, take as much of the mental game off of his plate, and just let him go play on instinct. If you do that and it's a disaster, at least it will be an exciting disaster to watch. So that's kind of where I'm at on here. So I'm okay with people having hope. But don't confuse hope with delusion. It is okay for people to use historical context and use past performance to predict future success. And I think that's what we were both doing with Kenneth Murray. So Calvin Ridley. Now it's $50 million guaranteed. I do not see anything about what the fully guaranteed money is as of right now. That Titans deal sounds like ownership telling the GM to get me a new AJ Brown. That's a wild contract. Oh, it is $50 million fully guaranteed. So that's wow.
That's a lot.
So $50 million fully guaranteed is now the second highest under Tyreek Hill. Okay, that's the second highest contract under Tyreek Hill, but it's a $23 million per year contract, which is what I thought that he would get, is a $23 million AAV, but $50 million fully guaranteed. That says a lot about his market, first off, because fully guaranteed is obviously a sticking point. So we'll see what all the signing bonus, the numbers is, and all like that. I mean, $50 million guaranteed isn't. Let's see, AJ Brown was $40 million guaranteed, so fully guaranteed. So this is $10 million more fully guaranteed 2 years later. Calvin Ridley is not the player that AJ Brown was, but I feel like this says a lot about what Nick Holtz knows from behind the scenes.
Yeah, I just tweeted that.
And I think this also says a lot about what they're doing at number 7.
Get your Joe Alt jerseys. I'll have a discount code
jersey
on Twitter soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. You can get your jerseys delivered, then go join the Bone and Joint Clinic or whatever
get your back cracked.
Bone boner thing you're doing now with your shirt slut stuff. Okay, so we both have been kind of all over the map on Calvin Ridley. There's a lot of risk with this deal, especially with the $50 million guaranteed deal. And traditionally, free agent wide receivers don't really live up to the contract for the most part. But if there's a guy to bank on in the free agency class, I would say that it was always going to be Calvin Ridley. But $50 million fully guaranteed, that is, if that remains true, that is wild.
That is wild. Golly, that is crazy.
It's really hard to process right now.
It is, because I totally did not see this coming. I haven't even been bothering to put Calvin Ridley on any of my free agent lists or anything, because I just didn't think that they were going to be in his market like this. Yeah, it's almost baffling that they went and made this deal. And look, I mean, Ridley is 29 years old. He's not exactly a young receiver.
We call him 27 and a half in NFL years, though.
Well, yeah, because he that FanDuel suspension.
Yeah.
But he, I don't know, man. That's a big bet on Calvin Ridley. And look, I mean, it definitely says that Nick Holtz feels like he did an awesome job in Jacksonville last year, that he loved him, that this was the guy that they needed to take him over the top. He fits beautifully, I think, with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, this is a guy who can separate against man coverage, and actually run routes, at a very high level, which Hopkins can too. He's just not a great separator anymore because he doesn't have the speed. So Ridley still has the speed. But man, Hopkins, Ridley, you're kind of working with something there. Now, what do you do for the other
best
spot,
tandem? Though? I mean, isn't it the best tandem that Tennessee Titans have, even including AJ Brown and Corey Davis, is the best tandem that they've had? I mean, at least on paper it is, right?
Probably. I guess so. It's tough because I do think AJ Brown's the best receiver out of any of those guys. So you're kind of comparing number twos there, but I don't know. It's a huge swing. It's exciting. Look, they're gonna give Will Levis a real chance, right? Like, we're not gonna have this thing where it's like, okay, well, there's nobody he can throw the ball to. Ridley is proven. Hopkins is proven. Those guys can do it. They both have multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Ridley has broken 8 touchdowns, I think 3 of his 5 seasons in the NFL. So they can absolutely do it at the receiver spot now. It's going to be very interesting to kind of see where things fall out from here, because look, I mean, you just have to get tackles right now. I mean, and you're kind of cooking on offense.
Yeah, I mean, if Brian Callahan lives up the Billings, I was really hard on Calvin Ridley this whole offseason. And the more I did my research for a recent article, the more I looked at, his numbers and all this kind of stuff, because he really had a good bounce back year last year. If you look at, let me pull him up real quick right here. Let's see, Calvin Ridley. His AAV last year was his second highest. His approximate value to the team was his second highest since 2020 with the Falcons, when he had 11. And 9 is really good. It's above average, okay? So it was the second highest. It was also we'll talk about how he was used in Jacksonville. It was his third highest EPA per play, and his tied for his third highest in wins above replacement. So he had some good metrics, but it's really hampered by the year that he went down. A lot of his metrics, the year that he went down in 2021, didn't play in 2022, really hurt his chances of rebounding. But he rebounded a lot better in when you get to the stats than I thought he would. But if you go to reception perception, thanks to JT, producer JT from the Hot Read podcast, and this podcast is probably going to be really long. But everybody was really hype about Calvin Ridley last year. And we kind of said, you kind of got to factor in, and I'm sure Braden's very happy right now on vacation, but as soon as you got to factor in that he spent a year and a half away. So that's almost like being an ACL injury. So he was always going to have to take some time, but he still got over 1,000 yards. And I think that everybody kind of was out on him because they put too high of expectations on him last year, including myself. But if you look at his success by route in 2023, and he does red, yellow, green for all the arrows. And there's the screen, the slant, the flat. There's another route. There's the curl, the comeback, the out, the corner, the dig, the post, the 9. He's green, which is above average in everything except for curl. And in curl, he's below average, but he was still 72.2% success rate on the curl. So his route running is pristine. I'll have to look up his separation. I don't have his separation numbers, but if you could do that while I'm finishing this on Next Gen Stats, maybe we'll get some ideas there. But his route percentage, though, is the problem. He ran very few routes and that's what he says. He goes on to say, one consistent issue throughout the season was the Jaguars coaching staff, under the direction of overwhelmed offensive coordinator Press Taylor. This is Matt Harmon at receptionperception.com. Was Ridley's all too static deployment. Ridley lined up on the line of scrimmage on 78.8% of his sampled snaps and took 81.8% of his snaps outside. His best seasons as a Falcons wideout came when he moved around the formation and was deployed at X and flanker on a near equal basis. The problem in Jacksonville's last season was that Ridley was their lone above replacement level outside receiver. Christian Kirk is a great slot receiver, but the drop-off from Ridley to Zay Jones or Jamal Agnew wideout was dramatic. And the coaching staff did very little to accentuate their best wideout and far more to hide and cater to the inferior players. With DeAndre Hopkins across from him, that is not going to be the case. And the other thing is that man and zone, he had a 71.9% success rate against man, an 80.4% success rate against zone, 66.7% against press, and 64.1% against double coverage. That's still really good high success rates when you combine that with his success rates in route. And the fact that his success rates on corner and posts are 80, which are two of the deep ones, are 88.9 and 73.3. That's really good. I'm still concerned about this guaranteed money, but you know what? One of my things was you can't pocket watch a free agency. It's not our money. Let's see if it turns into a bad contract instead of automatically assuming it is a bad contract.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ultimately the money is the money, and what will determine whether this is a success or not is whether or not Ridley performs. And if he doesn't perform, it's going to be a bad contract. If he does, it's going to be the right amount of money that you had to pay to get the guy that helps make Will Levis the best version of himself, which is, again, still the most important thing to this franchise right now. And at the end of the day, like, this is not a contract this is not the Russell Wilson contract. This is not the Deshaun Watson contract. It's not going to cripple the franchise. And look, those contracts didn't even cripple those franchises, right? Like, you take your medicine, you get out of it.
They haven't even restructured
Deshaun
Watson's contract. I think they're going
Right.
to eat Deshaun Watson's contract this year because they restructured it last year. They're going to eat it this year to probably cut him and move on.
Yeah.
But I also want to say this just real quick because I want you to finish your point. But I want to say this. If you were just a few hours ago complaining that they weren't spending any money and they were sitting on their hands not spending any of this money and then turning around and complaining that they paid a wide receiver too much money, you got to pick a lane because you wanted them to overspend and spend a little bit because you wanted them to keep Danico Autry. You wanted them to keep Derrick Henry. You wanted them to keep Azeez Al-Shaair. You wanted them in on Danielle Hunter. Those guys all got paid above market value, and you would have had paid more than the above market value to get them. So make sure that you are keeping it consistent. But back to your point.
Yeah, and Albert Breer has numbers now that it sounds like the Patriots were in at $22 million per year. The Jaguars were offering just shy of $20 million per year, which may be because the Jaguars just don't have a whole lot of cap space to work with. And they might have also been under the impression that they thought he'd come back at a little bit of a hometown discount. All the reporting.
Nick Folk is back, baby. We are just rolling today.
Cooking. All right. So the Titans will be able to score some touchdowns and kick some extra points. All right, there we go.
I will say this now: Spotrac is saying that's just $50 million guaranteed, not fully guaranteed. So we'll see how that actually shakes out. So that number, we may need to settle down. That number, we just got to figure it out.
Yeah, this is a fascinating bet. Look, an offense with Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Chig Okonkwo. That's something that you can work with. Now they still have to fix a tackle thing. And this does seem like it is a forecast of Joe Alt at 7 if you ever saw one, right? Or maybe it's a trade back and then it's Olu Fashanu or JC Latham or whatever. We talked about this last week. But they've got to find the tackles. And there's still some tackles out there. Like, you could go get one in free agency, like as far as like a right tackle to come in. And then you have your kind of poo-poo platter competition at guard between all the guys like Brunskill and Radens and MPF, which, by the way, like, speaking of white knighting, can you all give it a rest with Dylan Radens a little bit? Like, I just, for 3 straight years, there's been all these expectations with Dylan Radens that, you got to play Dylan Radens. You know, he's good. This is the breakout year. This is the breakout year with Dylan Radens. We set it up before his second year, and we talked about it before last year, and it just hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. He's been fine. Like, he's not a disaster anymore. He's taken that next step up to, like, he's a fine backup who, if he comes into the game, isn't necessarily going to get you killed. He's shown nothing to prove that he's a starting level offensive lineman. And I don't want the Titans to just continue rolling out these guys who have shown nothing at the NFL level and hoping that maybe this year it'll be different. And I know Bill Callahan's great. I think he's an awesome offensive line coach. I do think he'll help those guys. I think he'll make them better. But he's also not a miracle worker. Like, he's not going to make Dylan Radens not be a waist bender. He's not going to make Nicholas Petit-Frere, completely forget about his inability to deal with an inside move, right? Like, maybe he can, I don't know, but chances are some of those limitations are still going to exist. And they aren't going to suddenly be all pros.
I know that we're celebrating Calvin Ridley. I know that we're celebrating Nick Folk. The problem is that free agency, I was told, ended yesterday.
Ooh,
so none of these signings are actually official. So unfortunately, return to sender on all these players. That's what I'm getting out of this. No, but I mean, like, I agree. It's like the Sadiq Charles thing. Okay, there's a lot of money there, right? I mean, there's not a lot of money spent, and it's just a depth signing. But you know what that tells me? Them being in, supposedly, according to Ramon Foster on Chuck's Okorafor and being in signing Sadiq Charles tells me that they're not happy with the depth behind this offensive line. And I don't understand why people think that, well, they're still going to give these guys a chance. So listen, they haven't cut any of them, but I think what they're telling you is that we're wanting to find guys to either push them to be better or push them out the fucking door. And I think that's what they're looking for. And they're just going to have it feels like there's just going to be this big battle royale or Royal Rumble for that right guard, right tackle spot right now. Or they're going to go tackle. I mean, isn't that a possibility at this point until we see someone signed that is because they just signed Calvin Ridley. It's a deep wide receiver class. You can wait till the 3rd or 4th round to get a wide receiver. They could go left tackle, right tackle in this draft.
They could. I wouldn't rule it out. I will say this. DeAndre Hopkins, we just talked about Derrick Henry is at the age where you have to worry every season.
Dare try to trade away DeAndre Hopkins.
No. I'm not saying they should trade him away. They shouldn't. But he's at the age now where you do have to worry about the cliff coming for him at any given season. Hopkins was great last year. There was not a huge sign that there's going to be a big drop off coming. He was healthy. He's coming back healthy. You can feel pretty good about him this year. But he's not under contract for 2025, so getting the guy who's going to eventually replace Hopkins now could be pretty important to kind of having that continuity in the pipeline at receiver and giving Levis a little bit of stability to where you're not saying, all right, well, now Hopkins is gone in 2025 and you've got Ridley still, but now we're going to have to go draft another rookie receiver and throw him into the grease immediately. To get you somebody that can help you across from Ridley. So I think there's still a need for wide receiver, a young wide receiver. I don't know that you probably don't need to sign another free agent wide receiver if you don't want to. But I still think if the wide receiver class is as good as we think it is, and I think it is, grabbing one
going in the 4th round, I'm going to be creaming pants. I'll run out of pants. They'll all be.
He's your Tank Dell this year.
Yeah. Oh no, he is my Tyjae Spears.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I kind of like Cowing, but this is super fascinating. It definitely has huge ripple effects. I feel like I'm going to be tweeting or writing a lot about this in the coming days.
I mean, I told PK, it's hey, I'm going to sit on this article for a while just in case they sign anybody or something happens, and then I'm going to have to write about Calvin Ridley, Nick Folk, and Mason Rudolph. And now
it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot happened just in the span of the show. We should just stay on the air and see if they'll assign DJ Reader and Justin Simmons too.
Jason at Over the Cap, who I implore you, if you're listening to this for whatever reason, Jason from overthecap.com, to figure out the Chidobe Awuzie contract details. But other than that, he calls us, he's getting Kenny Galladay vibes from this contract, which makes me feel like that he's never watched football in his life.
I don't understand that at all. I mean, Kenny Galladay, one was constantly hurt and then did not give any shits. I don't think Ridley is a guy that's just not going to give any shits when he gets here. I do think he's going to show up and want to play. So I don't have that big concern. And look, it does make me feel better. And we talked about this, I think, on the show before, that if the Titans don't pursue Ridley, to me that says all right, Nick Holtz feels like that's not really a guy you want. But the fact that they paid him $50 million guaranteed, I guarantee you Nick Holtz was in that building going, look, this dude's awesome. He's going to come in and he's going to kill it for us. So there's no way they committed to that without a glowing recommendation from the guy who knows him better than anyone else in the Titans building right now.
Because the only guy that I wish they would have signed that they didn't was Patrick Queen. But then, we talked about it yesterday in regards to Patrick Queen on the same vein as Nick Holtz, is that, well, Seattle wasn't in on that price either. Why did he not want to go to Seattle? Or did Mike McDonald not think that he had what he needed to do for Patrick Queen? Something was up there And I feel like here you're like, okay, well, this is pretty good about what everything that transpired last year. Because I said on Monday on the show, because I was for the article that I wrote Stack in the Inbox, because I've been very anti-pay Calvin Ridley. And I did a lot of research. I watched some games and all this kind of stuff, read about a lot about the situation in Jacksonville and all this kind of stuff. And so I softened my stance. And I came to this conclusion when I was reading about all these rumors about Calvin Ridley and the miscommunication and this and that. Then you take that with what reception perception says and how well he was still performing. And it was things out of his control that was going on around him. I'm thinking, sounds like a lot of excuse making and blame shifting away from their quarterback is what it kind of feels like to me. And let me say this, Gabe Davis is not an upgrade to Calvin Ridley, and neither is Devin Duvernay is not an upgrade over Jamal Agnew. Just want to throw that out there to anybody that is talking about losing free agency, probably not now, to the Texans. The Jaguars have consistently now two back-to-back off seasons kind of stayed status quo or gotten worse, and that's not where it needs to be for the Jaguars.
Yeah, it's definitely this is kind of a I always like to say like the team should run their own race. Like you don't need to be so fixated on like doing something that hurts your rivals or whatever. Like run your own race, be your best team, because at the end of the day, like yes, you're competing with your division, but you're also competing with the AFC, and you can't be so nearsighted on just focusing on AFC South teams. But taking the best receiver away from a division rival, and look, Trevor Lawrence, that is a bad receiving core now.
Yeah.
Not great. So and I think their offensive line was god awful last year. Will probably be bad again this year. Yeah, it's kind of dicey down there in Jacksonville.
Let's look at it this way now. The Tennessee Titans have been linked to Jerome Baker, Amik. Is it Eric Armstead or Amik Armstead? I know there's an Amik Robertson, Eric Armstead.
Yeah.
And Justin Simmons. They've been linked to all three of those players as well, and this does not preclude them from signing any of those players. And I'm sure there's other players on the way, but this is shaping up to be an all-timer of a free agency class for the Tennessee Titans. But just to say that the reason I bring that up is because Calvin Ridley does not preclude them from still signing more good players that you are aware of that can actually help this team. Less Kenneth Murray's, more Calvin Ridley's.
Exactly. Yeah, that should be the show slogan right there. Yeah, I'm honestly I'm still a little bit gobsmacked by this whole thing that like they just. And let me also say this, because I've been critical of Rand Carthon on some stuff, and I will give him his flowers here. They moved like a stealth ninja on this thing. Like nobody had the Titans and Ridley really linked. I mean, it was reported
Till Ricky.
Well, till Pretty Ricky got the cat out of the bag, but nobody was out there talking about Titans involved in Ridley. It was the Patriots and the Jaguars. It was a 2-horse race. Everyone was talking about how the Jaguars were so clearly colluding, basically like with Ridley, to not sign this deal until after 4:00 Eastern
It was
time
such
today.
blatant collusion, by the way. I mean, just blatantly.
Well, it would have been had he actually signed there, but it turns out the Titans were like a thief in the night and like come in and just steal him right out from underneath. Full credit to Rand Carthon for not letting any of that get out there, not letting the Jaguars get wind of it. Because look, if the Jaguars bidding against the Patriots, like, you don't know. Maybe if they hear that the Titans are coming in, they know the Titans have a ton of cap space, they're a division rival. Maybe that gets Trent Baalke's blood up and makes him raise his bid or whatever, and either makes the Titans overpay even more or takes the deal from them. But Carthon moved stealthily here, and that's a commendable deal.
someone had asked in the chat if what this does to how much money do the Titans have left over after the Calvin Ridley deal. Cap hits won't be released for a couple of days. If it gets released today, I'd be very surprised, but it's not released when the contracts are announced. The cap hits and the full-on details typically take at minimum 4 to 5 hours to actually be released. So we're not going to have that information right off the top for you. Okay, so let's talk about let's switch gears. Tennessee Titans have now gotten Lloyd Cushenberry. They got their center of the future, or at least for the next few years, and they got Calvin Ridley for the next few years. DeAndre Hopkins for this year, Chig, Tajay, Tony Pollard. They got Peter Skoronski. We know that they still have 3, and they got Chig and Josh Wiley. They have a relatively good core here to work with. So it all comes down now. Mike, if you are approaching free agency from here, do you still go after a guy like Jonah Williams or Tyron Smith and keep on going, or do you maybe take a chance on your guy that you love, even though he has the worst stats you could ever put together, and Hollywood Brown? Do you still attack? How aggressive do you keep moving now that you got Calvin Ridley? Like, do you shift to the defense? Like, what is your thing? What was your preference?
I think you've still got to sign an offensive lineman. You can't go into the draft expecting to take care of it all in the draft. Even if the plan is now to take a tackle at 7, which feels exceedingly likely, or after a small trade back, whatever. But yeah, I think you throw resource into the defense, and they're still going to have a lot of cap space. Like I know, I think based on my math, and I was pretty close on the Pollard cap number, and then we already had the Awuzie and Cushenberry number, so we should be pretty dialed in here. I was at like 50. Let's see, where was my number? I'll get the exact thing here. I was at 50. Where was it? Shit. Okay, here we go. Great audio here. I came out to 53.2 million in available cap space for 2024.
And that's using now, if you use over the caps number, they bake in, I believe, the draft class, and they bake in, which is the full amount of the draft class, which is not the correct way to do it, I believe.
Right.
And then they bake in these like workout bonuses or workout insurance things. So there's really whatever number that you have is usually a couple million more, because Spotrac does not do that.
So they have somewhere between like 53 and like 56, 57 million dollars of cap space going into the Ridley, Folk, and who was the other one that signed? I'm having trouble keeping track.
Mason Rudolph, Julius Chestnut, and Jack Gibbens.
Okay, so Mason Rudolph was what, 3 million. Folk was around 3 million. So let's say the Titans are probably Ridley's 2024 cap hit number, I would imagine, is going to be somewhere in the like what, 7
or 8
million, yeah, somewhere in there. You're probably still above $40 million in cap space for the 2024 season, which means you can absolutely still go get Eric Armstead, DJ Reader, Kendall Fuller, Jerome Baker, and they should be still going after those guys, because to me, this does make the Titans, this moves the needle for me. Like Calvin Ridley moves the needle in that I feel like
17-0.
No. I do feel like that the window, the Titans' ability to compete is now at a much higher level than it was when we started the podcast.
So, less than an hour and 13 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think this has changed things for me in that, you know, hey, if you go throw some of these veterans in on defense, because look, if they were to get like an Eric Armstead, a Chase Young, a Jerome Baker, and a Kendall Fuller, that's a pretty salty looking defense all of a sudden. And you've got these weapons on offense. You go get Joe Alt, you go get, you know, I don't know who you want to plug in at right tackle. Like, do you take a dart throw on like a Josh Neiman? There's, you know,
he's still out there. I'm kind of surprised he's still out there.
Apparently he's got a bad attitude, and the Packers hated him.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, that's what I heard. So
That didn't stop Aaron Rodgers from getting a lot of
yeah.
money.
But hey, look, a Mekhi Becton, like you could still go get a Mekhi Becton. I still would be interested in Josh Jones. There's still tackles out there that you could get that maybe like give you a little bit higher floor at that position. Because I think, look, if you're taking a guy in the top 10, top 15 at tackle, he's probably going to be your day one starter. So you've got to find one more offensive line starter, I think, and then you focus everything else on the defense. And you could build a pretty salty defense with the guys that are out there. There's still some good defensive players available in free agency. Yeah,
so
I'm a little bit excited.
Can I say something? Number 38 is officially wide open. It is not left. It's not tackle, wide receiver, or wide receiver tackle.
Let me ask you this:
officially wide open.
Does this change where you're at as far as moving it for L'Jarius Sneed? Because that's the other thing that's been blowing around out there. Now you don't need to take the wide receiver necessarily.
Ooh, that is a good question. I think I'd be willing to move off the second if they would throw in a third.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. I think that's where I'm at. Like, I don't think I want to give up a straight up second.
Yeah.
For L'Jarius Sneed. But I think I'd give up a second if they would give up the third, because I think that provides you equal value, because their third is, of course, going to be at the very bottom of the third. It's not going to be at the very top where our second pick is. So I think that's where I'm at on that. But I do think that, like, it is wide open. It is wide ass open at 38. Like, I don't know what they're going to do at 38 now. I lean cornerback. I know a couple people have said that. I don't think necessarily that it's going to be still a wide receiver there, but I think it gives them the option to be flexible if a really good wide receiver is there that they like, that they will still draft one. They still think it's very possible. But right now, like, if it changes my one outlook on anything on the draft, is that right now it is Joe Wall at number 7. I'm not going to be talked off that ledge for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be stunning if the Titans did not take a tackle with their first pick at this point. Yeah, this really opens up a lot of interesting scenarios here, because, and I do still think like DeAndre Hopkins is probably not going to be around a whole lot longer, so you do need to probably get his successor lined up now,
which would technically be Calvin Ridley, I guess.
No, but I'm talking about, like, you still need two. Like, you need
right.
You've got Ridley at one side. You need your Calvin, your DeAndre Hopkins replacement.
I mean, if they go and draft Rome Odunze, let me just say something. Remember all those pants? All those couches are going to be destroyed in this house if they get Rome Odunze.
It's that would be something. That would be something. Yeah, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, receiver trio coming at you. That would almost just be too much at that point. But God, yeah,
let me say something about this contract real quick.
Yeah.
So Michael Pittman and now Calvin Ridley have both gotten paid relatively big contracts. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, Devontae Smith are all next. This contract is not going to look as bad as it probably does to some of you right now. Is not going to look as bad in a few years unless Ridley flat out stinks. Now, if Ridley flat out stinks, then it is a bad contract. But if it maintains being a 1,000-yard wide receiver with really good success, really good athleticism, this contract is going to pale in comparison to what these guys as agents are going to get paid. And these guys are going to get paid because he is the Christian Kirk of the wide receiver draft class this year, because that's where I've been waiting on. Who is going to be the guy that gets this wide receiver market back up? Because even though I think that Darnell Mooney got promised way too much fully guaranteed money, him and Gabe Davis and Mike Evans, and Deontay Johnson gets traded for nothing. It's kind of like, man, this wide receiver market's not really doing any favors for these big guys. Now these guys are going to be getting paid. Include Nico Collins on that later. Whew.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. This contract, that's why you should always remember contracts are measured by what they end up looking like. I know that's probably not the best way, but this could end up looking really, really freaking good.
Yeah, it's just like any other deal that gets signed. I mean, I think somebody, it might have been the guy from Over the Cap, had put out there that he's going to be the 10th highest paid receiver from an AAV standpoint, with this deal, which I mean feels like, I mean, you're never going to pay a guy exactly what he's worth in free agency. You're always going to pay him like he's like 5 to 10 spots better than he really is. But then you also have the understanding that like all these guys that are coming up behind him are going to pass him, and before like next off season is over, you're going to see Calvin Ridley's deal is going to be probably like 16th or 17th in AAV.
Yeah.
This is just like when Tannehill,
Heck, even by the end of the
paid.
year, it may be that. I mean, it may not
Yeah.
even be next year. It may be by
True.
the end of this season with all these guys that are extension eligible.
Might be
I
by the
mean,
end of this podcast.
he may get knocked
who
down
knows?
fairly quickly. Yeah. I mean, he may get knocked down fairly quickly. I mean, I have to say that faith in Rand Carthon is at least on paper, and you do not win in free agency, but at least on paper, faith in Rand, for those that have kept and maintained the faith, has paid off. And I've been pretty impressed with who they've been involved with and who they've decided to come out of the running, walking away from. Like I said, the only guy that I really wanted that I thought they could have had was Patrick Queen. So we don't know what the issue was there. But at the end of the day, you walk away with a guy that has a wide receiver one potential in Calvin Ridley. We have a wide receiver. We know that the Tennessee Titans have a wide receiver one in DeAndre Hopkins. You get your kicker back. He tested the market. And he came back cheaper than the other free agent kickers that signed before him that were already on the market, who were worse than Nick Folk. You have a much better backup quarterback situation, probably a tier 2 backup quarterback in free agency, but still, we talked about it earlier. He has a record of 8-4 when he's had to step in. You've avoided giving away draft capital for T. Higgins or for L'Jarius Sneed so far, but you avoid giving up draft capital, so you still have a lot of draft capital. You got your center of the future. You got your running back that you could pair with. You got your running back that you could pair with Tajay Spears and not tip your hand whatsoever on Tony Pollard. And listen, we didn't get to really talk a lot about my boy Tony Pollard. You can read all about him in my article coming out podcarsky.com, also stackingtheinbox.com, and also a football show tomorrow. You can also read about him in today's article with Mike over at paulkarski.com. So make sure you go and read those over there. Chidobe Awuzie still got some work to do on the defense. Like, it's not over. Yeah. It's a marathon. It's not a race. But they have a commanding lead in Titans free agency history right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's an impressive haul already. Like, just if you told me that they were going to get the guys that they've already got, it's an impressive group. But I don't think they're done probably shopping in the top of the market, to be honest with you. I think we'll probably see one or two pretty big names come in before they're all said and done. I like Awuzie a lot. I've been a fan of his since I studied him for the 2017 draft, I think it was. The Titans ended up taking Adoree Jackson at 18. Awuzie was the corner that I wanted them to take. Turns out I would have been a better drafter than John Robinson on that one. But Awuzie is turned into
case for a lot of our stuff.
Well, true. Awuzie is a super physical player. One of the other things that stands out to me, and just studying these guys, going through writing about these guys, all of them have like major like cultural leadership kind of traits. Like even Kenneth Murray, like as much as like I kind of bag on Kenneth Murray just not being like a very instinctive player, he's by all reports a great dude and like a leader and like a guy that brings juice to the locker room and things like that. Certainly if you look at a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry, who I'm like over the moon about and I think is a huge deal in itself, leadership, ability to get the offensive line organized, ability to help a young quarterback set protections, smart, like super smart player. those kind of guys, and Awuzie is one of them too. Physical leader, part of the culture change in Cincinnati that has put them on this run. Carthon's bringing in a lot of guys that are, as he said of Tyjae Spears, made of the right shit. So I like that direction, and I like a lot of the players that they're getting. I mean, I wish you would have consulted me about Kenneth Murray, but who knows? Maybe that one will work out too. Yeah, we can't get them all, but everything else has been pretty dead nuts so far. I think. Yeah, pretty exciting.
I think we're going to end the show. I know that everybody probably wants us to stay on just in case more news breaks, but we'll have to end the show right here. I got an article to write, shows to write tomorrow, so maybe I'll just copy and paste some stuff from Stocking the Inbox. I read about Calvin Ridley over on PK, so I don't know. But either way, this is an exciting episode. It did exactly like I wanted it. I wanted to go on at 3:30 because I was hoping for some news to break while we were live, and it worked. So I'm all okay there. The next step is the offensive line, and also still fixing the holes on defense because there's a lot of holes on defense, including defensive line. Well, the other linebacker spot. Don't let Jerome Baker leave the building on Thursdays unless the medicals are bad, in my opinion. But either way, it should make for an exciting. Hope we didn't even get to talk about Chase Young. He's on the radar too.
Chase Young.
Throw him behind Arden Key.
Eric Armstead. Yeah, DJ Reader. Yeah, so many guys still out there that are floating around. Justin Simmons. We didn't talk about him at all.
No, we didn't talk about maybe they go after Hunter Renfrow and just get rid of both Traylon Burks and Kyle Phillips this offseason. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? That's been the best part about this free agency is the fact that I have had no clue what to expect from this free agency other than they have to find guys, right? So it's been very exciting. Greatly appreciate everybody that has stayed with us through this this crazy roller coaster of an episode. Really appreciate it. Bluegrass Beverages are a sponsor. If you live near the Hendersonville, Tennessee area, make the drive out to Bluegrass Beverages. Get to all your liquor, all your provisions for any kind of party that you have. They have mixers, beer, liquor, wine, have it all. Top shelf stuff you probably have never even heard of. Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Been in business for over 50 years. For Mike, I'm Zach. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.